You're watching Capital City Sunday.
Good morning. This week on Capital City Sunday.
She has spent her entire career in politics, and have things gotten better?
Wisconsin's highly contested U.S. Senate race takes center stage as Democrats fight to maintain their majority.
You have to win every swing seat that's up this year, and that includes Wisconsin.
Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin and Republican businessman Eric Hovde join us to discuss their efforts on the campaign trail with the November election less than 9 weeks away. And former President Donald Trump makes his first campaign stop in Wisconsin since the Republican National Convention as Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz do their first sit-down interview. The latest on the presidential race as both campaigns lock in on the Midwest. Good morning, I'm Braden Taylor in for Darrielle. The Republican primary in August officially set the field for Wisconsin's closely watched Senate race, finalizing a matchup between Republican real estate executive Eric Hovde and Democratic incumbent Senator Tammy Baldwin. This race could determine the balance of the U.S. Senate, and it's expected to be a close one. A poll by Emerson and The Hill that came out Friday showed Baldwin with a slim lead over Hovde, 49% to 48%. Darrielle recently sat down with Hovde to talk about the issues.
And joining me today is Republican candidate for U.S. Senate Eric Hovde. Eric, thank you so much for being with me this morning.
It's great being with you.
With Vice President Kamala Harris now leading the Democratic ticket, we've seen a gender gap. National polling has shown a gender gap in terms of nearly 22% between male and female voters. And you are challenging Senator Tammy Baldwin. What is your messaging to women to get behind your campaign and vote for you in November?
Again, it's back to the core issues, the economy. Women, just like men, are being impacted, on how to feed their families. You go to the grocery store, whether you're a man or a woman, you look at the prices and what have happened to them. Cost of housing. Younger people have really been hammered by the cost of housing. So, the economic issues matter greatly. Secondly, security. Women, every bit as much, if not more so than men, are concerned about, security, safety, crime in our streets. Talking about issues that matter to women, I think is important. Senator Baldwin has been in politics for, really her whole life. I mean, she graduated and went right into politics. So almost 40 years she has spent her entire career in politics. And have things gotten better for people, particularly over the last 12 years since she's been a U.S. Senator? I think most people would say no.
Abortion access is still a top issue for a lot of voters in this race, specifically across national races. You've said abortion should be decided by voters through referendum, and you've talked a lot about that here in Wisconsin. But what is your stance on abortion and restrictions pertaining to abortion?
Well, as I've said, I've made my position pretty clear. Now, Senator Baldwin's running ads that are totally lying about my position. Then again, every one of her ads have been lying about things I've said or taken out of context. I do not agree with an abortion ban, which she has an ad running about that. And I've been clear about this well before I got into this race and since I've been into it. Look, as I said, I think it should be decided through a referendum. Everybody will have their vote. I'll have my vote. My position is I believe in the beauty of life. Again, I have 2 daughters, 3 grandchildren, and life is precious. And I agree with exceptions for rape, incest, and the health of the mother. And I think a woman early on in her pregnancy should have a right to choose. But where I draw a very distinct line versus Senator Baldwin is that when a baby can be born healthy and alive, I find it unconscionable that we would terminate that baby's life.
And immigration obviously is another top issue that the Republican Party is really focusing on ahead of November. You've said you did not support the bipartisan foreign aid supplemental that stalled in the Senate earlier this year. You've also criticized President Joe Biden for his executive orders that have seen some border crossings decrease significantly from June to July. But kind of what is your policy plan and how you're hoping to attack immigration if you are elected to the Senate in November?
Sure. First of all, let's be very clear. The last year of President Trump, border crossings were a little over 300,000. The very first year Joe Biden took over and Kamala Harris was the border czar, they removed a variety of different things, like stay in Mexico, Section 42, I think the other one's Section 8. And all of a sudden, we had over 3 million illegal immigrants come into our country. And then to 22, we had over 3 million. And in 23, well over 4 million. As I said, the low estimate is 10 million, but most sheriffs on the border will tell you it's anywhere from 13 to 16 million people. So we need to close our southern border. The problems that have come into this country are enormous. As I said, it's impacting the cost of housing and health care. And by the way, health care costs are only going to rise because when they're not paying into the system, that means that cost gets transferred to all Americans that are paying for medical care or through higher health insurance premiums.
And the bipartisan border deal, it did kind of lay out some specific funding to be allocated to specific areas of security patrolling at the border. But I really want to get your stance and to better understand specifically, if you were to help draw legislation in the Senate, what would you specifically be trying to tackle to address the border crisis?
I would legislate, first of all, that bipartisan bill was a few senators on the Republican side negotiating with the president. And when almost every senator and everybody in the House saw what was being negotiated, all it did was codify a certain amount of people coming in. It wasn't dealing with any of the structural issues. And it was really kind of wrapped to get another package of aid to Ukraine. That's why the House pretty much rejected it, and most U.S. senators, when they found out, rejected it. So I don't think that was doing anything to really address the illegal crossings and closing our southern border. So we need to change the laws that, the second somebody steps into the country, they have the right to go through our legal system and stay here. And by the way, we're the only country that allows this kind of access to our country. There is no country in the world that has an open border like we have, where they have the capacity to control their border. So we want to have specific laws that tighten up who can cross in. We should put back in place stay in Mexico immediately, because Mexico has basically just opened itself as long as they shove the people right over into our country.
Eric, you're obviously preparing for a debate on October 18th against your Democratic challenger, Senator Baldwin. How are you preparing for that?
Well, I would love to get more than one debate. Usually you get 3 to 4 debates. That is typical. Senator Baldwin has ran from debating me. I've gotten one debate at the end of the election process, October 18th, well after early voting has started. I think that's unfair to the voters of Wisconsin, because what should an election be about? 2 people standing in front of reporters and the public, addressing their questions and their issues and explaining how they're going to make their lives better. But Senator Baldwin avoids interviews and certainly is avoiding debating me. I frankly think because she doesn't have a record to stand on, and she doesn't want to address her votes on opening the border or all the debt that she's created and ignited the inflation and the things that she has to be held accountable for. So I really hope that she would provide more debates. Madison West, where she went to high school, even reached out and wanted to see if she would do a debate and reached out to me. I accepted. I went to Madison East and I said, sure. But she never even got back to her former high school, much less, other news organizations where she's rejected any further debates. So I think it's unfortunate and unfair to the Wisconsin voters.
Eric Hovde, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.